What the wise man once say there, all I got's a red guitar, 3 chords, and the truth. It's not a red anything, and it's not a guitar, but I got 3 chords and the truth. And the truth is, chord progressions are an amazing thing, and we've already begun our study of how you can take these different notes of the scale, put them together into chords, and then move them around to create beautiful music. Hello everybody, my name is Futch, and welcome to Dulcimerica. Thank you for joining me. This is part 2 of a multi-part series that'll take a look at chord progressions, and as you know, last week we got really deep into the theory behind how all this stuff works. Today we're going to focus on just the 1, 4, 5 chords that can be used in a number of different progressions. Now once again, let's recap a couple of things. First of all, when we play in a particular key, whether it be D major, C major, E flat major, or E minor, there is a set of rules that you can follow. Those 7 notes follow rules set by the key signature. It'll tell you how many flats and how many sharps there are in the key, and that means to take particular notes either up a half step or down a half step. Of course, C major has no flats and no sharps. We'll get into the study of these keys a little bit later on, but every single one of these scales and keys have 7 notes attached to them. Even though we do play 8 notes, that means we have 7 different notes, and then at the very top of the scale, we play the note that we began with, the root. Again, it's an octave above where we began, so we play 8 notes all together, and octo is Latin for the word 8, and that's how that all comes together. So we've got our 7 notes, and then we know that if we start from any particular place in the scale, and then hop over every other note and add up till we get 3 notes all together stacked on top of each other, we end up with what's called a triad, of course also known as a chord. Then once we've got these 7 chords for every single scale, that's 3 major chords, 3 minor chords, and 1 diminished chord. Those are the chords that we can use to put together our chord progression, and the melody comes out of those 7 notes. And because they're all coming from the same fabric, that means that they play very well together. Now there is a bit of a science to have these chords move back and forth, and again we'll get down deeper into that later on. But today we're going to focus on the most common chords and the most common progressions known all around the world, and that is the 1, 4, 5 chords. So notice I'm talking about the chords that are built off the 1st, 4th, and 5th notes of the scale, and you can play them in that order, 1, 4, 5. But you can also get different types of chord progressions by rearranging the order of the chords. You can also get different sounds and different feels by playing some of the chords longer than others, and also different time signatures. And of course, we can always put different melodies over the top of them. So with just 3 chords, we can play hundreds and thousands of songs, each one sounding different from the other. It's pretty amazing how that all works out. But right now, we're just going to focus on the 1, 4, 5 chords and some of the popular ways they're put together to create music. And now I'll show you a couple of other really fun things here in the middle of our look at some of these tunes. And you can try this at home. I'm sure you know tons of 1, 4, 5 songs that are your favorites, and maybe we'll hit a few of them here today. So I'm in the key of D major. We'll be in the key of D major today. I'm tuned to D, A, D here on the mountain dulcimer. So the chord shapes you see me playing are going to be good for D, A, D. But you can do this 1, 4, 5 moving with any type of tuning and any type of instrument, of course. So we've got chords that are built off of the 1st, 4th, and 5th notes of the scale. So in the key of D, let's think about what that scale is. We've got D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C sharp. Those are the 7 different notes. Then we play D again at the end, and that's our octave. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and D. Notice I said sharp twice on 2 notes. F sharp and C sharp are the 2 sharps we have in there. So there are 2 sharps in the key of D, and I think a lot of mountain dulcimer players know that just from hearing it mentioned over and over again. So let's look at those 1st, 4th, and 5th notes. We're going to start off with D. Remember, we're going to hop, skip, and jump through the scale. Every other note is added until we end up with 3. So if we go D, skip E, go right to F sharp, skip G, go right to A, D, F sharp, and A, make a complete triad, a D major chord. So if I play a 0-0-2 chord, what we have is D on the bass string, okay, and remember that's our root. On the melody string at the 2nd fret, I'm playing F sharp. That's going to be our 3rd, also known as a major 3rd to be more specific. And on the middle string, I'm not touching it at all. And so we know we're tuned D-A-D, so that middle string is going to be playing A, and that gives us our 5th, also known as a perfect 5th. Put them all together, and we end up with D major. Now, of course, that's not the only place you can get a D major chord. We can also play 2, 3, 4, and those notes are on different strings, D, F sharp, and A. We can also flip that chord upside down and get D, F sharp, and A. That's the slant chord right there. This is actually an L-shaped chord, the 0-0-2. We're just not putting in the other parts of the L down here at the bottom. We also have an extended slant D major with D up here, F sharp on the middle string, and A there on the bass string. And we can flip that over as well, and we've got our D, F sharp, and A, D, F sharp, and A. So there are a lot of different positions that we can use and different chord shapes to get those same 3 notes. And notice how all of those chords sound a little bit different. They're the same 3 notes, but they're pitched in different places. Sometimes the root of the chord is D, but sometimes the lowest note is A. Sometimes the lowest note is F sharp. It depends on where you're playing the chord, and that voicing of the chord changes the character a little bit. And that's another way that we can take simply 3 chords and make it sound very, very different. Because I can go 1, 4, 5. Well, we're almost getting ahead of ourselves there, but we'll get there in a second. Anyway, we've got all these different types of chords that are all D major based off of the 1st scale degree. So let's take a look at our 4th note of the D major scale, D, E, F sharp, G. Okay, so we're going to start with G as our root of the chord this time. We're going to skip over A and go right to B. That's our major 3rd. And then we're going to skip from B, and remember we're going up the scale. So even though we've got extra frets there, remember that our scale involves C sharp, not C natural. So we're not going to go to the 6th fret to hop and skip and jump. We're going to go from G, hop over A, go to B, hop over C sharp at the 6.5 fret, and then add D right there at the 7th fret. So we've got G, B, and D that all together will create a G major chord. Notice how that sounds. Bum, bum, bum. Listen to the D major ingredients. Bum, bum, bum. They're different notes, but there's a similar sort of feeling that you get, a sound, and that's a progression of melody or progression of notes. So why does that feel the same even though we're using different notes? Because the notes that we're playing are the same distance or the same interval apart. And that is one of the really important things to think about when we're doing chord progressions, why they sound different in different keys, but they still move the same way. It's because the notes and the chords are traveling the same distance from one to the other. And that's kind of a cool thing. So a G major chord would be like a 3-1-0 with G here, B here, and D on the open string. You can also flip that upside down. 0-1-3. We can do and that's an extended slant chord. We can do an L-shaped chord, 3-3-5, like this. Here we've got G on the bass string. We've got B on the melody string at the 5th fret. We've got D right next to the root, and that's the 5th. That's going to be on the middle string at the 3rd fret. We can flip that upside down. And we have a slant chord version of G here. G is on the middle string. There's our root. We've got B on the bass string. And then we've got D on the melody string. But we can flip that around like this. and play a 7-6-5 chord, G remains the root on the middle string, B now on the melody string, and D now on the bass string. You might be seeing a pattern here as far as where the roots, the thirds, and the fifths are located, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But let's do one more. We have our 1 chord, D major. We also have our 4 chord, G major. So that's the D major chord, the 1 chord built off of the 1st scale degree of the D major scale. Then we have our 4 chord G built off of the 4th scale degree of the D major scale. Now we're going to go to our 5th scale degree of the D major scale. That is A. D, E, F sharp, G, A. So we're going to hop, skip, and jump now. Remember, bum, bum, bum. There's our root note, bum, bum, bum. So we're going to go bum, 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 bum. So we're going to go A. We're going to skip over B and go to C sharp. We're going to skip over D and go to E. And there, same kind of feeling, different notes. Isn't that cool? A, C sharp, and E make it A major. That's the 5 chord built off of the 5th scale degree of the D major scale. So we can also do, let's see here, we can do the dreaded, we can do the 1, 2, 4 chord with A here, C sharp here, and E here. That's an extended slant chord. We can flip that around to a 4, 2, 1. With A over here now, C sharp still in the middle, and then we've got E on the melody string. We can do 4, 4, 6.5. For an L-shaped chord, there's our A on the bass string, C sharp is on the melody, and E is on the middle string. We flip that around. A is now on the melody string, C sharp is now on the bass string, and E remains on the middle string here. And we can do a slant chord, 6.5, 7, 8. A is on the middle string. We have our C sharp here on the bass string. E is on the melody string. Flip it over. A remains on the middle string. We've got C sharp on the melody string, and we've got E on the 8th, on the bass string at the 8th fret. So we've got our 1, 4, 5 chords, and we know certain places of the fretboard using these chord shapes where we can play them. So we have a lot of different options as far as tonality and different sorts of voicings that we can use for all the chords. Now here's a little secret. Now I've shown this before on episodes of Dulcimerica, but I think it's really going to come in handy for you as you start to deal with different keys and different tunings. Let's start off with the slant chord. Let's start off with the L-shaped chord. And I'm going to go ahead and just for this example, I'm going to use G major. So with our L-shaped chord, the root is going to be on the bass string. If the finger that's closest to the bridge of the instrument is on the melody, then that's how this rule is going to work out, that our root is going to be on the bass string. Let's take a look at a G major chord that's a slant shape. Remember that root's on the bass string for the L shape. So we'll do our 5, 6, 7 chord here. And now the root is on the middle string. G is at the 6th fret. So we've got G, we got B, the major thirds on the bass string, and D, the perfect fifth, is on the melody string at the 7th fret. The root is on the middle string. So L-shaped chord, root is on the bass string if the finger that's closest to the bridge is on the melody string. But 9 times out of 10 when we as Dulcimer players play these chords, we do tend to play them this way. And then the root's on the middle string for the slant. So let's do an extended slant chord, and we can either play that down here, or so you can see the complete formation of the chord, we're actually going to play that here. There's our extended slant. And in this case, at the 10th fret, the root is on the melody string. So we've made our way from root on the bass, root on the middle, and then root on the melody string. So we've got B, our major third, is on the middle string, and then we've got D, our perfect fifth, is on the bass string at the 7th fret. Finger that's closest to the bridge is on the melody string for these shapes. So we're sliding diagonally this way for our extended slant, for our slant, and then you really could draw a diagonal between the 3rd fret and the 5th fret. It's all coming towards you as a player and towards the bridge. That's the one thing you want to think about. Why is that? Because remember, we can flip these chords over. We can invert all of them. And that means that the root is going to shift sides in 2 instances of these chord shapes. The first being our L-shaped chord. Remember, the root's on the bass string if the finger that's on the melody string is closest to the bridge. But what if we flip it over from 3-3-5 to 5-3-3? Well, now if we think about it, the root of the chord, G, is actually at the 3rd fret on the melody string now. But the finger that's on the bass string is closest to the bridge, and that's the rule. If it's on the bass string closest to the bridge, that means that the root of the L-shaped chord is going to be on the melody string, not the bass string. Let's look at our extended slant. Finger that's on the melody string is closest to the bridge. That means the root's on the melody string. But if we flip that chord over to a 10-8-7, G is now over here on the bass string. And in this case, the finger that's on the bass string, the finger that's on the bass string is closest to the bridge. That means that the root of the extended slant is going to be on the bass string as opposed to the melody string. Finally, there's no change at all with the slant chord because the root is on the middle string. So no matter how much we flip back and forth, that root is going to stay right where it is. So that's easy to remember. So remember again, with our L-shaped chord, the finger that's on the melody string closest to the bridge, the root's on the bass string. Finger that's on the bass string closest to the bridge, the root for the L-shaped chord is on the melody string. For our extended slant, finger that's on the melody string closest to the bridge, root is going to be on the melody string. Flip it over though, and the root, the finger that's closest to the bridge is on the bass string. That means the root of the extended slant is going to be on the bass string. Write those down and keep them by your dulcimer while you're working. And what this does for you is it opens up a world of you not having to open up a book full of chords going, which one am I playing right now? If you know what note it is that you're playing at any given point on your fretboard, you can use those 3 chord shapes, and all you have to do, you'll know the root of the chord, then is to figure out if it's a major chord or a minor chord, because these shapes will yield both major and minor chords, as you'll find out more as we continue on with our study. I want to give you a little bit more fuel for the fire as we move through, so you can have some more options as you're moving through all of these different chord progressions that we're going to work on today. All right, so let's just kind of exercise that a little bit and play our 1-4-5 chords, but we're going to use different voicings of these chords in order to bring some variety into the mixture. So, one I didn't mention here is a root 5 chord. That's our 101 for A major. And that is a favorite to be used by mountain dulcimer players. It's very easy, and it's very, very close to our D major down below and our G major. It's called a root 5 chord because it's got a root and it's got the 5. It's got the bottom note and the top note, but it's not playing the middle note. In this case, it would be C sharp. So it still works as an A major, but it's not a full triad, just so you know about that. But it still works very, very well for the mountain dulcimer. So let's just go ahead and play a little bit. Let's starting off with D, G to A, 1, 4 to 5. We've heard these 3 chords a bunch of times, right? Let's play different voicings now. D, G, A, back down to D. Let's change it up again. That's an awful lot of variety for just 3 chords, isn't it? And it all is being made possible by shifting the pitches up or down using these different chord shapes. It's a really, really neat trick to get more mileage out of those 3 chords. All right, so now that we've had some fun moving those chords around a little bit, and now you can see how these chords are located all over the fretboard, I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the many different ways that we can move through the 1, 4, 5 chords. And of course, probably the one that most mountain dulcimer players have played, because it's the mountain dulcimer national anthem, is Boiled in Cabbage Down. What we've got here is 1 to start off, going to 4, then going back to 1, and then going to 5. So it's that return back 1, back to the root, that makes it a little bit different than just moving through the 1, 4, 5. So let's put that in terms of chords. We're going D, the 1 chord, then we go to G, the 4 chord. Then we come back to 1, D major, and then we go to the 5 chord, A major. So let's go ahead and do that. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 chord, D, 4 chord, G, 1 chord, D, 5 chord, A, 1 chord, D, 4 chord, G, 1 chord, D. Real quick, we're going to play A, 5 chord, and then end on the 1 chord. Usually, when you're playing a certain key, you will always start with the 1 chord and end on the 1 chord. You start from home, you go on a little journey, and then you come back home. You don't necessarily have to, but more often than not, you'll start with the 1 and end with the 1, because it's very, very satisfying to do that and not leave people kind of hanging out, waiting what's going to happen. If I were to play 1, 4, 5 and then stop, you'd get a very, very big sense of when's the other shoe going to drop. See, if you like words to end right there, a lot of people would be very frustrated. So we need to resolve that and go from the 5 chord to the 1 chord, which is very, very satisfying because it drops that other shoe. Oh my gosh, the tension. Music is a lot about tension and release. It's about like a rubber band. When you're playing a song, you stretch the rubber band, you create tension, and then you release the rubber band and get resolution. Tension, release, release. It's not really intense with major chords, but it becomes a lot more interesting when you start adding other chords to the mix. Boil them cabbage down, boys, turn them hoe cakes round. The only song that I can sing is boiled in cabbage down. Boiled them cabbage down, boys, turn them hoe cakes around. The only song that I can sing is boiled them cabbage down. That's fun, isn't it? I know you guys know that song very well. That's a 1-4, 1-5 chord progression. And notice, some of those we're hanging out for a full measure, and sometimes we're only there for a beat or two. And that's another way that we can make things very, very different when we're playing these chord progressions. Let's take a look at Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace is also a 1-4-1-5 chord progression. So D to G, D to A. Amazing Grace, 1 chord, to the 4 chord, G. How sweet, back to the 1 chord, the sound. And we're in 3/4 time, which is also a very, very, another way of making things a bit different is to put a different time signature on things. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. Back to 1. But instead of changing right away, we actually hang on the 1 for a little bit longer as a platform to rest on before we move to the 5 chord, A. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. And then we get to the 5 chord. Imagine if we ended Amazing Grace on the 5 chord. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Thank you, good night. No, that wouldn't fly. We want to get that resolution from the 5 chord back down to the 1 chord. Was blind, but now I see, and we're back home. Many times you probably heard a band say, take it home. That means if we've been ending on the 5 chord a lot because we want to keep rotating over and over again the tune, that means take it home, play the root chord, play the 1 chord at the end of the piece. You hear that a lot in blues music and also in rock and roll as well. All right, so there are a lot of songs out there that are true 1-4-5 chord progressions. They're using the 1-4-5 chords, but that's also the order in which the chords move, and they kind of bounce back and forth. A real good example of that would be Stir It Up by the late, great Bob Marley. Stir it up, little darling, stir it up. We're just going 1, D, to 4, G, A, 5, back to 1. What's another song that goes 1-4-5? We'll shake it up, baby, now. Twist and shout. Come on, come on, come on, come on, baby, now. Let's see you work it all out. Woo! So what we're doing there is we're changing the rhythm of how we move through the chords. 1, 4, 5. Hanging on the 5 a little longer. 1, 4, 5. 1, 4, 5. 1, 4, 5. And it just kind of, so it's got a really nice repetitive cyclical circular movement that's going on there as we're moving. We're going from the bottom of our chord progression, 1, progressing up to the next chord, up to the next chord, and then we're restarting, resetting, and going back to 1 and starting all over again. Another way to do that would be to walk back down again. Instead of going from 5 to 1, coming down to the 4, and then maybe going back up to 5 or back to 1. And I know you guys have heard that before, and listen to how I move through, and the rhythm has a lot to do with changing up how we're hearing these chord progressions. Before I even sing anything, you might recognize this chord progression. Louie, Louie, oh no, where we gotta go. Ay, 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 Louie, Louie, oh now, said oh we gotta go. How about Wild Thing, you make my heart sing, you give me everything. Don't know the words. Wild Thing, so forth and so on. So that's even got kind of a circular motion, but instead of going up from the root to the 5 and then restarting from the root, we actually come back down to 4. 1 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord, 4 chord, and walk back down to the 1 chord. So you see, we really change the feeling of a chord progression by the order in which we play the 1, 4, 5 chords, how long we hang out with each of those chords, and of course, the rhythm that we use to accompany. And then of course you've got the melody over the top of that and lyrics if there are any. So there's a lot of things going on. Now let's make this something even more extremely different. We're going to use just the 1, 4, 5 chords, but now we're going to play a 12-bar blues progression, which means we're going to hang out with the 1 chord for 4 whole measures. Then we're going to go to the 4 chord for 2 measures, back to the 1 chord for 2 measures, then the 5 chord for 1 measure, the 4 chord for 1 measure, and then the 1 chord for 1 measure, and then we'll go back to the 5 chord for 1 measure, and that's going to take us all the way back around again like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. G chord 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Back to 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 5 chord. 2, 3, 4 chord. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 5 chord on that last measure. Got the blues, baby. Got the blues so bad. 4 chord. Got the blues, baby. I got the blues so bad. 5 chord. Don't know what's happening. 4 chord. But it makes me pretty sad. 1 chord. And the 5 chord is a way of, but wait, there's more. 4 chord. 1 chord. 5 chord. Take it home. Stay on the 1 chord for 11 and the 12th measure. And there you've got something a bit different. There's also something called a quick change blues, which in the 2nd measure goes to the 4 chord for 1 measure, and then it goes back to the 1 chord. I believe I'll dust my broom. Then 4 chord again. I believe I'll dust my broom. My friend done left me. She can have my room. And then back to the 1 to take it around again. So there are some examples in the blues world of how you can really vibe and groove on a chord for a very long time before you actually change. And that would make it a longer progression, but we're still only using 3 chords. That's kind of cool. Let's take a look at a couple of different variations now. We're going to drop out a chord in this case. In this case, we're going to go just 1 to 5. Not even going to use the 4 chord at all. And a couple of good examples of that, going 1 to 5, would be, Alouette. So, of course, we're starting off with D as the root, the 1 chord. And then our 5 chord, A. Alouette, je t'alouette, alouette, je t'alouette. Da 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 ya da 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 dum da da ya da da da. So it's again how long we hang out with the chords, the rhythm we put into it. But that's only got 2 chords right there. Now let's compare Alouette to something like, I don't know. I got my first real 6 string, got it at the 5 and dime, played it till my fingers bled. It was the summer of '69. Yes, yes, yes. 1 and 5. Now, the summer of '69 is actually a lot more than just 1 and 5. It actually does some other progression twists and turns. But you can see you can get a lot of mileage out of just bouncing back and forth between two chords. A lot of it has to do with the rhythm. A lot has to do with the melody that goes over the top of those chords. And of course, a lot of it has to do with not only the lyrics, but the instrumentation, whether it be guitar, piano, a full marching band, whatever it might be. Another way to make all of these songs with 3 chords sound very, very much different. Let's take a look at another way of hanging out with a chord for a long time. We'll do some 1-5, 1-5 here, and then a little bit of 4. We'll hit the 4 chord one time, but largely going to do 1 and 5 for this old classic. Camptown races, sing a song, doo-dah. Camptown races 5 miles long, oh, doo-dah day. Go to work all day. Then we hit the 4 for something a little bit different. Go to work all night. Oh, the doo-dah day. So isn't that interesting that 1 and 5 are the primary chords used for that tune? But to give us just something a little bit different in the B part, we go very, very briefly to the 4 chord. Now there are very, very complicated musical theory terms for the 1, the 4, the 5. In fact, for all of the scale degrees, and I don't want to lay them on you just yet. But that 4 chord is often viewed a bit as a disruptor. Like it breaks the power, the magic spell that the 1 and the 5 combination has, because the 1 and the 5 are a very, very powerful movement, a very, very powerful relationship. You'll often heard the 5 chord referred to as the dominant, and it is dominant. It loves to resolve to the 1 chord. That's a very satisfying resolution right there. I know a lot of it has to do with the individual notes in each of the chords and how far they're moving when they actually resolve. In the case of the strongest resolutions, you'll find that a lot of notes are only moving a half step. In the case of the C sharp, in A major, it's resolving to D in the key of D. So when we go from the 5 chord, A major, to the 1 chord, D major, it's that half step movement between C sharp and D that really feels awesome. And you can resolve up or you can resolve down. Either way, it sounds really, really good. Let's look at some 1-4 stuff now. 1-4 is very interesting. Again, 4 is sort of a disruptive chord in the hierarchy of the 1-4-5 progression, but it can still be used to keep a perpetual motion thing happening. Let's take a look at this. How about little Wilson Pickett? Just going from D to G. I'm gonna wait till the midnight hour. That's when my love comes tumbling down. I'm gonna wait till the midnight hour when there's no one else around. Technically, you could really play 1-4 over and over again, and it's just got this groove, this vibe to it, but it doesn't have the resolution, the finality that a 5 chord to the 1 chord does. So it really allows itself to continue to bop along for a while. It's great for a dance song like that. But we could also do something maybe a little bit different with it, and we won't move as fast. We won't make the chord changes so fast. Glory days, well, they'll pass you by. Glory days, in the blink of a young girl's eye. Glory days, glory days. And at the very, very end of that 1-4 by Bruce Springsteen, we actually put the 5 chord in there, and that change up after bouncing back and forth between the 1 and 4 chords so much. We could do that all night long. The 5 says, all right guys, it's time for something a little bit different. glory days, glory days. And it goes boom, right back into the 1. Again, just 3 chords we're working with, but we don't necessarily have to use all 3 chords all the time. You could hang on the 1 for a long time, bounce back and forth between the 1 and 4, bounce back and forth between the 1 and 5, and whatever chord you didn't play, slip it in there somewhere as sort of a, hey, this is a little different, isn't it? Very, very fun to do this on a very, very moderate scale with just 3 chords. All I got's a red guitar, 3 chords, and the truth. I'm not sure who exactly said that. It might have been Bob Dylan, but I know for certain that Bono said this in a number of different places. Of course, Bono being the lead singer of U2. So why don't we wrap things up with some U2. Still haven't found what I'm looking for is the tune. We're going to go 1, 4, then 1, then back to 4, and then for the chorus, 5 down to 4, down to 1. I have climbed highest mountain, I have run through the fields, 4 chord, only to be with you, only to be with you. Notice how we're going to stay in this sort of cycle between 1 and 4. I have run, I have crawled, I have scaled these city walls, only to be with you. Now the payoff to bringing the 5 now. But I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Doing 5, 4 to 1. But I still haven't found what I'm looking for. That's a lot of different types of music right there, man. That's all kinds of stuff. Again, using just 3 chords. And sometimes not even using all of them bumped up next to each other. We're using different rhythms. We're using different lengths of time that we hang out with each one of those chords. We've got different melodies, different lyrics. We've got different feels and vibes and instrumentation. It all cooks up together and makes you wonder, not even wonder, it makes you realize, no wonder, that so many songs have been written using the 1, 4, 5 chords. Not just in pop and rock music, but in gospel, in country, in folk music from all around the world. They use the 1, 4, 5 chords. These are the 3 naturally occurring major chords out of every single key. And major chords in general make us feel happy. They make us feel hopeful. It sounds like victory. So I think that's my hypothesis anyway, is that is a popular chord progression or a usage of those chords because in general, people just like to be happy and they like to feel upbeat. So this has been a look at 1, 4, 5 chords, how to arrange them, how to progress through them, what you can do with them, and different things we can throw together in combination to make them very, very compelling pathways to really awesome music. Next week, we're going to throw just a little bit of a wrench in the works, and we're going to start putting some minor chords to mix in to really expand our emotional abilities to tell a story. Thank you guys very much for tuning in, and if you'd like more of this type of stuff, you can find tons of it on my Patreon. That's patreon.com/BingFutch. $5 a month or $50.40 for the annual pass gets you all of my books, all of my CDs, everything I've produced, plus weekly content every single week. Lots of exclusive stuff, and you can get lost in there for sure, but you're getting a small sampling of it here via Dulcimerica. Thanks to my patrons. I love you guys, and we're going to see you next week with part 3 of our study of chord progressions. We'll see you guys soon.